Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Bolton North East. I particularly congratulate him for that bit on in Mandarin, which was blatant showing off, but nevertheless quite impressive, I have to admit. Madam Deputy Speaker, as the country struggles to deal with a global health pandemic, the very structure and foundations of our economy are coming into focus. And today's debate is an important opportunity not just to talk about how we deal with the immediate impact of the virus, but also to look at the foundations and the structure of our economy, because we have to build resilience. We know that this shock won't be the last that our economy faces. We need to build an economy that is able to absorb and bounce back from future shocks. So the introduction of the government's so-called levelling up agenda, it does reflect what many economists, politicians and commentators have recognised for many years, that the gross inequalities that exist in the UK economy are in no small part down to where you are born. Tackling regional inequality must be central to any strategy to create a fairer Britain. In London, Britain plays home to the richest area in the whole of Northern Europe. But the UK is also home to the poorest 5 regions in the whole of Northern Europe, with West Wales and the Valleys the very poorest of all. In 2016, average incomes in London were 77% higher than the UK average. That is as staggering as it is unsustainable. But we also need a commitment from government that they will bridge the widening gap between our cities and our towns. The economic story of the last 40 years has been one of a job market that has shifted from manufacturing to services, boosting metropolitan cities but leaving industrial towns bereft of opportunity, wealth, power, investment and a sense of security. Workplaces have also changed beyond recognition, with productive and meaningful industrial work evaporating and high streets being ripped up due to rapid technological change. A winner-takes-all post-18 education system has whisked young people off to university, but has delivered nothing for those individuals and communities left behind. All of this has, of course, been compounded by a decade of self-defeating Tory austerity, a party that has responded to the seismic shifts that we're seeing in the global economy by treating industrial areas with a toxic mix of indifference and incompetence. But now, for electoral reasons, the Conservatives have put levelling up front and centre of their agenda. They know that their success in keeping hold of Leave voters in the North, Midlands and parts of Wales will be largely dependent on how they manage to transfer wealth and opportunity in those directions. That aim in itself is worthy, I suppose, but will the strategy succeed when the motives are skin deep? Let's look at the baby steps that the Conservatives made with this budget. Commitments on improving infrastructure and devolving power to city mayors are central to the Chancellor's promises. But the sense that you get of this budget is really a continuation of the city-centric model that the British economy is based on, and that has failed our economy for far too long, and our country for far too long. Plenty to say about Leeds, not that much to say about Lee. Policies for Birmingham, pittance for Bassetlaw. As a country, we need to be far more ambitious in tackling regional equality and in tackling the gaping chasm that exists between our towns and our cities. The likes of economist Paul Collier, the IPPR and the Industrial Communities Alliance have each identified important levers for this levelling up agenda. Across the board, there is recognition of the need to focus on local political autonomy. Whitehall simply cannot plan the economy of a distant area. It has to devolve more power everywhere, and not just via piecemeal city devolution deals. We also need a locally based finance industry. It was a huge mistake for the Bank of England to force the merger of regional banks. Local knowledge is essential in knowing where to lend. Then we need locally organised business communities working closely in lockstep with locally based college education. Local youth should be trained in pertinent skills which in turn help the surrounding firms. German tertiary education, for instance, has much stronger links with local business. For a decade, the Conservatives have failed those who don't go to university. Far from reviving vocational education, the government has poured money into universities which, as well as failing to defend free speech, have loaded students with debt and too often fail to provide them with any significant return on their investment. This cycle must be broken and must change. The government must also support clusters of industries that are emerging around the UK. For instance, steel and clean energy in South Wales, tech in Cambridge, chemicals in Hull, metals in Yorkshire. What we need is a comprehensive and integrated policy agenda. Investing in transport is important, but it will not suffice. A continuation of the city-centric model will lead to more social damage, increasing travel congestion, and will do nothing to green our economy. The most critical part of rebalancing our economy has to be a commitment to a modern manufacturing renaissance. UK manufacturing has been in decline for decades, dropping from 30% of GDP in the 1970s to a meagre 9% today. This is very much a political choice, it's not an act of God. In Germany, their manufacturing base has remained strong at over 20% of GDP, thanks to proactive government support, a proactive industrial strategy, and their economy is more resilient as a result. Of course, any successful UK manufacturing renaissance must be underpinned by a thriving UK steel industry. Steel is the backbone of the British economy. It is not a sunset industry, but a 21st century industry that continues to underpin our entire manufacturing base, from defence to aerospace, and in our everyday lives, from the houses we live in, to the offices we work in, to the trains, buses and cars that we travel in, including those new electric vehicles of the future. Steel jobs are well-paid manufacturing jobs, offering people in so-called left-behind communities real opportunities in life. Yet the Chancellor's budget did nothing to address the sky-high energy costs that are crippling the steel industry. UK steelmakers pay 80% more for their energy than their French counterparts, or tackling the extortionate business rates that are crippling our industry. If the UK government is serious about levelling up, steel simply must be front and centre of that strategy. Without its steel backbone, the British economy will not be able to stand up, let alone level up. Still no word, of course, as well on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which will replace EU development funding from 2021. The clock is ticking, but there is still no sign of the consultation on the fund, which the government promised at the end of 2018. Madam Deputy Speaker, levelling up cannot just be a buzzword. Getting Brexit done is already starting to come unstuck, with the Prime Minister's oven-ready deal seemingly stuck at the back of a frozen food section. The levelling up agenda mustn't be left to thaw, and neither must it come out of the oven half-baked. We need a whole-nation industrial strategy that actually reaches places like my constituency of Aberavon, that goes beyond the city-centric model that's laid out in this budget, and that begins to reunite our deeply divided country. Thank you.